Welcome to Speed Talk Live, which isn't really live, but a poorly produced podcast where we talk about NASCAR and all things racing. And occasionally we have a special guest or two, when we can get them to show up. Sit down, strap in, pull those belts tight. Speed Talk Live is on the air.
Pace car is in. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Speed Talk Live. I'm Greg Engel. Glad to have you. We got a lot to talk about today. Joey Logano winning at Nashville. Did Kyle Busch catch a break? Hooters flies away. Josh Berry has apparently found a home. And, of course, Chicago and a couple other tidbits thrown in throughout there. As always, joining me today, Owen Johnson, associate editor, cupscene.com, and future lawyer to the stars. Hello, Owen. How are you?
Hello, Greg. Big expectations. I like it. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, my friend. Here we are as we get into the middle of the summer. It's 90 degrees and 80% humidity here in Orlando, so my pool is calling. I'm looking forward to that. But let's talk about Nashville. It was all about fuel, and a little bit of rain. Christopher Bell took the lead early. He led a race high 131 laps, swept the stages, and as so often happens in these races, it appeared that, it was going to be Seabell's day. He was going to go on and win it. It was going to be, okay, just another race. But he crashed out, opened the door to others. Then the rains came. We sat there for about an hour and a half, I think. NASCAR dried the track. And in the end, it became a duel between Denny Hamlin towards the end and Kyle Larson. They both faded. Denny Hamlin decided not to take a gamble. He pitted before the end for fuel, while Logano, he was willing to gamble, and he won the jackpot. Over 110 laps to a tank for him when the stats say 85 laps. The difference here maybe, Hamlin has 3 wins this season. Joey Logano hasn't actually had a season to behold. He was needing a win. He rolled the dice. He won. He's now locked into the playoffs like Hamlin. So was he optimistic that maybe he would get a win, or was he resigned to the fact that, hey, we're probably going to run out of fuel because there's no way we can stretch it this far?
Honestly, I don't know the numbers and what's going on. I laugh because Paul asked me what I thought, and I said, I don't know. I don't have the computer in front of me. we had a laugh about it, but yeah, I mean, this one just takes the whole crew to do it. When you think about the engine itself with Roush Yates building the engine, obviously they can make some good mileage. Nick Hensley, our gas man, packing that thing full. That was key. Paul having the cojones to leave me out there, big. So, our engineers calculating everything, and I don't think we felt too good about it. As far as the last restart, I felt good when we came off of 4, and was able to clear Briscoe. I thought, okay, I was in good shape going to take the white off of 4, and then they threw the caution. I still don't know what the caution was for. And then you had to do it again, and I had to not only do the fuel mileage piece of it, but also you had Reddick with tires there at the end, and he was able to make some pretty big moves. And going down the backstretch, it started stumbling. I was like, oh no. I was able to throw a nice block on him, but even off of 4, it stumbled, and then it kind of just got like a quick little bit of gas, I guess, and it kind of gave me a little squirt, and then it started stumbling again across the line, and I just couldn't get to the line quick enough. If that start finish line was in the 1, we don't win the race. We finished 3rd or 4th, so definitely as close as you can cut it for sure.
So Kyle Busch had a great race going, finally, but he crashed out on lap 306 when Kyle Larson on a restart ran out of fuel, ran him up into the wall. But what was he doing back up there in the top 5? They had a crash a few laps earlier, NASCAR allowed him to retake his position. So that became very controversial. Brad Moran, the Cup Series managing director, explained Tuesday on the morning drive on Sirius XM NASCAR radio how Busch restarted that in fourth. His spots weren't taken away because our rules clearly states that you must maintain a reasonable speed, Moran said. And reasonable speed is for what track conditions are at the time. We don't want to encourage drivers to stay on the gas and just kind of, bang their way through. What Busch did was he avoided the accident. We deemed him not involved in that incident. He didn't stop. If he had to stop, he probably would have ended up towards the back of the field, but he was scored in the fourth place position when that caution came out. He didn't get into Ross Chastain or Kyle Larson and made very slight contact with the wall. So what we would deem that as not being involved in that incident, and that's why he was able to restart where he was scored. Moran said the order was based on the scoring loop data, which is what they score it with when the time of caution. That's what the last loop that the leaders were scored on, Moran said. So it really comes down to how we determine him involved in that wreck. And we did not determine him involved in the wreck. We determined that he avoided being involved in that wreck. Hold on now, because last year at a race at Darlington, Bubba Wallace wasn't in a wreck, but he checked up to avoid it. NASCAR lined him up behind the others that were involved in that wreck. So was Kyle Busch avoiding the slow crash? That's what NASCAR seems to think. Had he kept his speed, he would have crashed, and NASCAR made a judgment call. But on their official report, he was listed as being involved in that accident, and he was actually placed on the DVP clock. So, what's your take on all that, Owen?
I think it's a degree of inconsistency, which we've come to expect, I think, to a degree from NASCAR, because these are judgment calls ultimately. And so the tower is going to have to make a specific call in the heat of the moment about whether a driver should be put up in the front of the field. But I think one thing to just highlight is, of course, it's Busch. And his wife, Samantha, highlighted this on Twitter. Some of the commentators said if there's any driver this was going to happen to, referring specifically to getting involved in the accident, and then a later accident that took him out of the race, he managed to survive one overtime attempt up in fourth. It didn't do him a lot of good because he was collected in another wreck right after. But he's had a really rough season this year. We talked earlier at Martinsville. He explained that he was still trying to figure out the next-gen car, particularly on short tracks, how he drives it off the rear wheel, where it needs to be driven off the right front wheel. Since then, his performance hasn't particularly improved, worsened by a DNF at Gateway that he called frustrating. And Andy Petrie from Richard Childress Racing has stepped away from that team. There's an article up on cupscene.com from this weekend from his thoughts from the race and the general frustration, but a frustrating season continues for Kyle Busch. It just seems to be, of course, he's the one involved in this story. Of course, he has the bad luck.
I think there is some lack of speed there from RCR, but I also think, Busch is obviously one of the more talented racers that's ever been in this sport. And it's just a lot of bad luck. And Sunday, I mean, it could almost seem like NASCAR was favoring that, but I do think it was a judgment call in the heat of the moment. I do wish they would get more consistent on the calls. And it's not always going to go their way. It's not always going to be the storybook story, the storybook ending, because, having Kyle Busch in the top 5 would have been a storybook ending. And with the 5 overtimes, we'll get into that a little later. He definitely would have had a chance had he had enough fuel and not gotten taken out by Kyle Larson. One other note there, Chase Elliott spun earlier in the race, coming off a turn 4 solo spin. He got his spot back, but nobody paid too much attention to that. So again, it goes back to the inconsistency. Another driver to highlight, Josh Berry had a good day until he crashed with 4 laps to go. I would have loved to seen Josh finish that race where he deserved to finish, which was probably a top 5 and maybe the win. And we'll have more on Josh Berry in a minute. So there was a track record of 15 cautions and a NASCAR record 5 overtime finishes. And again, we're going to break that down here a little further in a minute. But all in all, I thought it was a great race. I'm glad Christopher Bell didn't stink up the show by his domination. I mean, it would have been fine if he did. If Christopher Bell didn't wreck out and he would have had that domination, it would have been great. We had that kind of thing at the All-Star race with Joey Logano, who went out there and kicked everybody's butt. It's going to happen. But in a way, I'm glad it didn't happen because it turned out to be a great story.
And hopefully for Christopher Bell's sake, last year, obviously in the championship finale, he crashed out after running well. Hopefully he's getting his bad luck. Obviously, it's heartbreaking to crash out of a race you dominate, but hopefully he's getting his bad luck out of the way early in the season, saving it up for the playoffs.
So what's your thoughts on these overtime finishes?
Yeah, there was some debate on social media about whether we should go back to overtime limits and having a certain number, back when it was green, white, checkered, limited number of those. I don't agree. We haven't seen this many overtimes before. Obviously, it's a new record for NASCAR. So this is obviously an unusual circumstance. And I think it was a pretty exciting end to the race. I always like to see a race ending under green. And I think a lot of other series do. I think about the Indy 500, for instance, which, despite the fact that there's no overtime rules, always seems to find a red flag at the end of the race so they can end under green themselves. If it starts happening constantly, maybe we can revisit it, but it hasn't been an issue previously. And I think a limit, honestly, I think opens up the door for race manipulation. If you know that this is the last overtime, why not wreck someone out and get the win when you're not going to have to re-rack the cars, take the damage? I'm not saying that will necessarily happen, but I think there's no reason to open up that door. I would always rather see the cars finish under green as much as possible.
And the fact that it is a record, the fact that we had 5 overtimes finishes, we've never had that before. Look, if this were college football, boys and girls, and we had 5 overtimes, this would be on the highlight of Sports Center. It would be all over the place. We'd be talking about it. It's fantastic. And then, you think of professional soccer, which can play to a draw unless it's a playoff. I mean, come on. I think the 5 overtimes was fine. I agree with you about the race manipulation. I think there was a case a couple years ago where we still had 3 overtimes, and Kevin Harvick was kind of accused of maybe trying to do something on the last one. So yeah, let's not open the door up for that. Let's go ahead. I keep the rules. I like it, and I think it was exciting. And of course, Logano's car passed inspection. So I don't know if he was peeing in his gas can. I don't know what happened, but it was a fantastic race. I really, really enjoyed it. And Nashville put on a super, super show. So let's move on. We found out over the weekend, we had some rumors that Hooters, who's been a sponsor in NASCAR since the days of Alan Kowicki, and most recently Chase Elliott, there were some rumors that they weren't paying their bills. And it turns out to be a wider issue of the tough restaurant in that business right now. We've had Red Lobster shut down. We've had some other Applebee's, for example, has closed some restaurants. Hooters is closing 40 restaurants, and they have not been paying their bills to Hendrick. Hendrick had a nice PR come out on Monday that talked about severing ties with them, and hate to see Hooters bow out like that. I do have an article up on Forbes. Go check it out. Forbes Sports Money. Now it's on my Twitter account. There's the thing is this. I reached out. I did the due diligence. I reached out to Hooters. I didn't hear back from them. I had reached out to their CMO last year and talked to him. We had a great interview when they were talking about the anniversary, and like any good PR person, you got to take the bad with the good. And I wish they would have said something, anything, but they didn't. So we'll have to see what happens in the future. And someone on Twitter pointed out that Hooters is a dinosaur from the last century, and I'm inclined to agree. Now, I come from a different generation, a totally different generation. I was raised in the 60s and 70s when times were different. In the era of this Me Too movement now, there's no room for women to be objectified. And I agree with that. That's why, to be fair, I haven't been in a Hooters in years. I have no plans on going one. I certainly don't go to a gentleman's club because we shouldn't be objectifying women. We should have them, they're equals, right? And that's the way it should be treated. So, I cringe when I walk on the grid and I see the Monster Energy girls. And I get it. You got to make a living, but there's other ways to make a living. But unfortunately, that's our society is still ingrained in that. But it's time to send them and grid girls like Formula One did. We need to send them packing, and let's put women where they belong, which is on equal par. Let's have them as crew chiefs, as engineers, as drivers, as crew members. That's where they need to be, and they don't need to be out there parading themselves around like a Christmas ornament. So, I know you, Owen, being of the younger generation, you probably aren't used to that, but I'm sure you inclined to agree.
I definitely agree, and I think we've highlighted some great female drivers specifically, but there's female engineers, crew chiefs, like you say, throughout the industry who are making that kind of change. Hopefully, that progress continues. And while I think there's a lot of problems with the restaurant industry, which is bad for a lot of people, obviously some private equity controversy there. But in terms of Hooters itself, we're going racing in Chicago this weekend. That's the new target audience for NASCAR. And I think having Hooters on the car won't change the Chicago crowd's preconceptions about what NASCAR is. And I think that if that's the crowd NASCAR wants to target, then a more diverse audience that's not having companies like Hooters on race winning cars is probably a better look for NASCAR.
Yeah, I agree, and obviously they're not going to be on the car anytime soon, if ever. I mean, I hope they rebound. I hate to see any business go under. I hate to see any business struggle. I grew up in a family. My father owned restaurants, so I know how tough of a business that is. So, I wish them well. Everybody I've ever talked to there on the executive side or on the corporate side have been great, and I wish them well. But obviously they're going through some rough patches. And we talked about Josh Berry earlier. This week, Wood Brothers is going to announce that Josh Berry will drive for the team in the number 21 starting with the 2025 Cup Series season. So Josh has found a home. That's unfortunately at the expense of Harrison Burton. We don't know what his future is going to be. And it's a shame because Harrison is a great kid, and I think he's a great talent. He's won before in ARCA, and the trucks, and I hate to see him, be the casualty of all this. So I hope he lands somewhere. Wood Brothers may surprise us, and they're going to field a 2-car team. I don't know, but it certainly seems like Josh Berry's found a home, and what'll happen with Harrison, we don't know. Now, unfortunately, that's my mom's favorite driver, so I know she's going to be heartbroken. We went to a Ford dinner a couple years ago, and I took my mom because I'm a good son, and we had dinner there, and Harrison was at our table, and him and my mom hit it off, and she still adores Harrison, always asking me about him, always watching, wanting to see where Harrison's at in the race. So, it could turn out good. Harrison may find a home that is more aligned and more in tune with his skills and may do better. But for now, let's hope that Barry can improve the performance of that team. And if not, it may be something deeper than just the driver. I mean, after all, they're a satellite Penske team, so you would think that they would be, improving performance, but it doesn't seem the case. So, I know Harrison's on your good driver list, right?
Yeah, he's a great driver to talk to, a very friendly face in the garage. But the performance of the 21 car has really suffered since he's taken that seat, especially compared to where Matt DiBenedetto was able to run in that car. The question now becomes, well, how much of it is a car problem at this moment in time, and how much of it is the driver? Obviously, Wood Brothers has Penske support, and their cars are built in the Penske shop. But while I wish Barry the best, and I know how talented he is, I covered his runner-up finish at Richmond last year when he really impressed me as a substitute driver. I think there are some deeper team management problems. So I have tempered expectations for what Barry's going to be able to do in that car. I don't think he's going to be able to run up front like he was this past weekend, but we'll have to see. And I certainly hope he impresses me.
Well, I mean, it could be a whole change with a new driver that could help that team overall. But yeah, you're right. It'll be something to look for in 2025. That's 2 of the drivers, the 4 Haas drivers who found homes. There's 2 more. There's Noah Gregson and Ryan Preece. So we'll see where they end up. And it'll be an interesting story to look forward to, for sure. Now, before we wrap up Nashville, Joseph Newgarden, 2-time Indy 500 winner, he was at the Cup race in Nashville. He's from nearby Nashville. He used to come to the track as a kid and watch racing. And so he was there Sunday. And he was asked again if he'd like to try the Indy NASCAR double like Kyle Larson did this year.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to drive a Cup car at some point. I used to go to Bristol races as well when I was a kid. Bristol's always been like very high on my list. This track and Bristol were probably the two that I went to the most to see Cup races. But to do the double would be, for me, it would be a great opportunity. I don't know that will ever take shape. It's really tough nowadays to get that all lined up. There's a lot of people that have to be involved and come together on that. So I think first and foremost, it was great to see Kyle do it. We'd love to see more people do it. And I think if you ask almost anybody across both grids, whether it's the stock car side or IndyCar, there's a lot of people that want to do it. I mean, any racer loves to run, multiple forms of motorsport. It's just difficult to do nowadays. Some people get programs put together, and I think Kyle probably has the most fluid. He's kind of everywhere, and he does it the most of anybody. But yeah, from my side, I don't know if I'll ever be able to put that together, but if I can, I would love to run the double one day. So it's definitely high on my list.
So the IndyCar series is going to race on that oval. That's going to be insane to see because the speeds are going to be so much different, but I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So wrapping up the news, longtime senior NASCAR executive Darrell Wolf is going to retire from the company at the end of the season. He's been with the company for 30 years, first joining ISC in 1995. Currently, he's the executive vice president, chief revenue officer, but he sent a memo out to colleagues this week saying he's going to step down after 2024 before moving into a consulting role for NASCAR. And Darrell, I can tell you that being a consultant, man, is the life. That's what I do full time. So welcome, my brother. And I like to highlight that because Wolf has done a lot of things that fans may not have seen. This premier partnership model that we went to in 2020 after decades of running, Winston Cup and Sprint Cup and Monster Energy Cup and all that. That was his idea, and he helped put that together. So he's always been fantastic to me. One of the friendliest guys ever. I mean, I see him at the track, and he's always stopping and asking how we're doing and all that. So welcome to the consulting world, my friend. I look forward to seeing you at the track and making some more contributions in the future. And finally, Homestead Miami Speedway has a new president. Guillermo Santa Cruz, who comes from IMG, which is a big media company. So here's the thing. I was so snookered in a way because late Monday night, we got a notice that the Homestead Miami Speedway was going to make a big announcement. Now, of course, in this world we're living in right now, at this part of the season, I thought it was going to be the schedule announcement because normally that's what happens. You'll see when the schedule comes out, tracks will send out announcements. They'll have track presidents available for comments, et cetera, and so forth. I truly thought that's what this was. So I was kind of snookered into this thinking, so I'm all ready to write about the 2025 schedule, and it's finally out, and we're going to Mexico, we're going to Canada, we're going to the bounce house, I just all this stuff, and I was ready, and it was good. Guillermo I'm sure it's going to be great. And I'll be there in a couple months. One of my favorite tracks. I lived there about 3 miles away from the track until Hurricane Andrew. So one of my favorite tracks. Looking forward to it. But yeah, NASCAR, you snookered me in thinking you were going to announce the schedule.
Just rant and rave like you do to the TV during sports.
All right, let's get into rants. Rain tires. Of course, as soon as it rained Sunday, people started screaming, why are we having rain tires? Well, they don't have them at Nashville because it's over a mile, and the rain tires are for road courses and the smaller ovals. Of course, New Hampshire, they were brilliant. We got to finish the race. Nashville is too big. And I think this was a stroke of luck on NASCAR's part that the storm was a quick mover. It came by pretty quick. The sun came back out. They were able to dry the track, and we were able to finish the race. And of course, Nashville has lights. I wonder what would have happened if that wasn't the case. If the rains came in and we were like stuck there. But it was a late night. but they didn't have to worry about a long delay. The mighty Air Titans got out there and did their job, the job they were designed to do. So good on them. But people were still complaining about the rain tires. So I know Owen has a rant, or I guess as a lawyer, this will be an argument, right?
Exactly. And so my argument here, it's about caution and consistency. Especially, I think it was the second and third overtimes, the cautions to bring out those overtimes, where a car was spun in the middle of the track and more drivers plowed in before the yellow flag was eventually thrown. I get not wanting to be too hasty. NASCAR is often accused of throwing cautions for no good reason. But the purpose of a caution at its most basic is safety, and letting more cars drive into a wreck just isn't safe. Speaking of cautions, there was also an incident where a track truck drove down in front of the field pacing under yellow. While the field is going slower under yellow, they're still going highway speed, so that could still be certainly dangerous and should not be happening. And NASCAR has a really great safety crew. We know this week in, week out. But some of the specific calls at Nashville, I felt, just didn't rise up to their usual standard. So I hope that we see the safest possible racing going forward and a little less inconsistency, especially with safety.
Yeah, and I didn't see that caution truck. Thank God it wasn't the jet dryer and getting hit by Juan Pablo Montoya. I'll never forget that, being at Daytona and seeing that. So yeah, you're right. There's a great safety crew. And there seemed to be a little inconsistency. So there were stumbles this weekend, but you know what? We're ready to move on. We're going to Chicago, the second after the inaugural last year. So far, the weather looks a lot better. And I hope they get it all in. I'm sure they will. But last year we couldn't have concerts. We couldn't have all the things. So let's hope it's a huge success this year. Somebody I want to mention is Connor Mozak, who's running the Xfinity race on Saturday. He's in a JR Motorsports car this year. Last year, he qualified fourth and was running in the top five, but had an engine issue. And then when they were getting ready to get that fixed, the rain derailed that. They had to end the race early, and he really never got to show what he was capable of. He's young guy, but he's shown some strength in a lot of different areas. I think he's going to have a good run on Saturday if he, doesn't have any mechanical issues again. But he's in a JR Motorsports car, which we know is top flight equipment. And so I mention him because he has a good chance for redemption. And his sponsor is a local company and a deal that Mozak himself, who has a degree in business entrepreneurship, put together himself. So I'm going to cover that on Forbes later this week. Look for that because I think that's a great story. Another thing on Saturday, Joey Logano is replacing Haley Deegan as AM Racing searches for improved performance. Which I kind of felt odd. It was the choice was Joey Logano because they have AM Racing has an alliance with SHR, so I'm kind of surprised it wasn't one of the SHR drivers. And I would like to think that they do need to up their performance, and it's not necessarily Haley that's the problem, because I still think she's a talented race car driver. She's maybe not in the right equipment, or there could be something at AM Racing that's not helping there. I know that in some cases this year she's had some issues that weren't her fault. So we'll see. That'll be lucky. And also NASCAR is going to have a major announcement, a major unveiling, not the schedule. Well, they could, I guess, but it won't be the schedule. But they're going to have a major unveiling come Saturday. I will have full coverage on that obviously on cupscene.com, but I'm also started to write an article for Forbes on that. I've talked to John Probst and I'll have that all ready. It's under embargo until Saturday, so look for that on there. As for Sunday, of course, Shane Van Giesenberg won last year. Could he do it again, or could we have a series regular? Now, speaking of a non-series regular, I know you talked to somebody today that you're going to be keeping your eye on this week.
Yeah, one of the drivers looking to upset the series regulars is Joey Hand. He's an IMSA driver for Ford, usually behind the wheel of the new Mustang GT3, which he helped develop. But at Chicago, he'll race the NASCAR Ford Mustang Dark Horse, driving the number 60 for RFK Racing. So I asked him about whether the development experience he's got from the new the GT3 program can translate over to driving in the Cup Series. Hi, Joey. Owen Johnson, cupscene.com. How much has working on development for the Mustang IMSA program enhanced your sense of what a race car is doing? And will any of that help you in making adjustments in your car for this weekend and finding speed, do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done this, probably don't need to say how long I've been doing this, but I've been doing it for a long time. And I've been fortunate to help develop a lot of race cars in the past 30 years of racing. So, yeah, I mean, we had a good go of development with Ford GT. And then now most recently, we're doing a lot of stuff with the Mustang GT3. And I mean, all that stuff enhances your skills. It's never ending. It's amazing that you can do it for as long as I do it and still learn stuff every day. I mean, people say it all the time, but it's really true. And I always keep my brain going. So, outside of what I do, my son's running a late model and he's racing go-karts, and, we talk about stuff all the time. How are we going to make more power? How are we going to find more grip? Whatever. And it never changes. That never changes for me. So whether it's the GT3 car or even now on the Cup car, fortunately for me, I am doing a lot of stuff in the simulator for the past 3 years with these guys. So every time there's a road course, I'm here in Concord doing things and helping and hearing the stuff and the changes and things that have worked and haven't worked or whatever, and being able to see the evolution that we started with since I was, one of the things for me is I did that, 21, I did the last Roval race in the old Cup car, and then I was with the first guy to drive the new car at the Roval that next day when we first started the next gen car. And so I've, in the background, I've been with this program in the next gen car since the beginning, kind of, right, for the road course stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's always, things are always turning. I mean, when I leave here in these weeks when I'm helping everybody, I still will text with crew chiefs and Ford engineers and be like, hey, you know what, I just thought something from when we were doing that session last week, maybe we should try this. It's this thing's always turning. There's smoke coming out here all the time. So I second to racing, it's one of my favorite things is doing that development, making things better. And in my life and my career, I've been super fortunate, especially with Ford, to be able to be with a program where, when you say this needs to be better, they say, we'll fix it, right? I have a ton of engineers between Ford Performance and Multimatic and all the people that we have. I literally say, this doesn't feel right. And they say, let's make it better, So when you come into the NASCAR world, working with all the Ford Performance people and then also all the teams, it's the same thing. So I enjoy that. Number one, I love racing, but that's my second favorite thing is helping with development.
I gotta get used to that studio that RFK's put together there. That thing is, I don't know if it's creepy or cool, but they do all their media avails now from there. But hey, good stuff there, Owen. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Joey does. My pick this weekend, Martin Truex Jr., which is kind of wild, but I think he has some extra motivation, this being his last full-time year. And also, I think Kyle Larson's going through his summer issues phases at the moment. So I think he would have been a pick. But for some reason, when we get into this summer stretch, once Kyle is locked into the playoffs, for some reason, I don't know whether they're trying to push too hard or what, but he always seems to go through some tough issues on pit road, on the track, until he starts to come alive when we get to the playoffs. So it would have been Kyle Larson, but I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr.
Well, unfortunately, Larson was my pick last week. I guess I didn't predict the summer issues quite as much, but I don't think either of us could have predicted that finish specifically. As for Chicago, I like to look at data for these picks, and there's just really not that much to go off of at Chicago. So I looked at the average finishes from all the road courses in the next-gen era, and one driver who stood out to me is Chris Buescher. In all 13 next-gen road course races, he's only finished outside the top 10 twice. He's yet to actually win on a road course, but I think Buescher gets it done in Chicago. And so I will actually be at the track this weekend in Chicago. I will be going as a fan with my dad, enjoying the race. And I'll have some coverage for you as what the fan experience looks like with all the music festivals, like you mentioned, and the fan engagement activities they have planned. See that on cupscene.com when the weekend is over.
There you go. You were there last year.
Yes.
And now this year you're going as a fan. So you and Dad, man, I love that. That's fantastic. I want you to go and not be pressured about it. You got to write a story. I'll take care of all that. You just go have fun with your dad. Go play in the park. Hopefully the weather's going to be a lot better. So that's awesome. Owen, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Listen, guys, July 4th week, go have some fun, blow some crap up, just not any of your friends or relatives. Let's have fun in Chicago. Owen, have fun in Chicago. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening to Speed Talk Live. For questions or just to tell us how bad our production is or to leave other feedback, leave us a comment below. For all the latest NASCAR news, visit www.cupscene.com. Until next time, peace out and let's go racing.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.